welcome to another edition of the Qorent-Xperts podcast. My name is Tolulope and I'm super excited to have you. Thank you for your comments and feedback on how we can generally make the podcast better. We see you, we appreciate you, and we say that you are the real MVP. So now to today's episode of the podcast. Today we are considering contactless payment technology and NFC-enabled smart cards, the benefits and security considerations. With me on the podcast today, I have the amazing Ifeanyi Wakwe, engineering manager at Qore, specifically our Pryme card issuance product. And before I bring Ifeanyi up, I'm going to basically just run through his bio. Ifeanyi brings extensive expertise in EMV system analysis and software engineering, particularly focused on card issuance and payment systems. Currently, he leads the engineering team responsible for Qore's card issuance platform, ensuring smooth operations and innovative advancements. His passion extends beyond mere cards to encompass payment technologies as a whole, reflecting his deep interest in the evolving field. From humble beginnings in tech support as an ISP to his current role as an engineering manager driving customer-centric solutions, he has tackled myriads of challenges, fostering his growth along the way. Off duty, you catch Ifeanyi enthusiastically engaged in all things football, whether it's playing, watching, gaming, or simply discussing sports. Everyone, a rousing applause for Ifeanyi Wakwe. Hi, Ifeanyi. Great to have you on the podcast today. Trust your day is going well.
Yeah.
How are you feeling this morning?
Very well. I like the way you introduced me, and I feel a little bigger than I felt when I started. Sometimes you might not know some things about yourself until you start telling. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I'm super excited to have you on this episode of the podcast. Awesome. So Ifeanyi, so you said everything football. What team do you support? I'm not a football fan, but I'm just curious.
I wish I could whisper this in your ear just for you. Because I know a lot of guys will come at me like,
oh my God.
Support? I'm an Arsenal fan, yeah. I know guys will come at me like, how have you coped all the while? Because it's been a long time coming. I'm one of the patient, resilient guys through thick and thin, being with the team.
Interesting. One thing I've realized about football basically is more about fan loyalty, much more than whether your team wins or not. It's great if your team wins, but much more than that. So, Arsenal fan.
I think that loyalty is going out the window because
it's going out the window.
I'm telling you, in recent times, a lot of guys just, I'm tired of supporting this team. I'm going somewhere else where they win stuff. Right? You see barely few guys just sticking to one team that is not winning.
Interesting. Yeah. So for now, we can still tag you Arsenal fan. Don't worry, I'll whisper it so that people will not know you're an Arsenal fan.
Just a few people.
That's cool. So today we're going to be considering this topic: contactless payment technology and NFC-enabled smart cards, the benefits and security consideration. I, for one, am particularly interested in this because I really want to learn a lot about this subject matter, and I know quite a number of our audience who would want to learn a lot. And I know you are an expert, you're a guru in this area, so we are here to come and draw as many insights as we can from you. I trust you're ready for us.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go straight to my first question. Basically, for members of the audience who are not throwing jargon around, can you just provide an overview of what contactless payment technology and NFC-enabled smart cards are in that sense?
All right. Beautiful place to start this conversation. I mean, question just hits the spot. We cannot have this conversation without the listeners having an understanding of all these technologies. Now, you have thrown out two technologies here in your question. Talked about contactless payment technology, and you also talked about NFC-enabled smart cards. I'm going to start explaining from the latter, because, I mean, you cannot have a payment technology, a contactless payment technology, without the NFC technology. I mean, in this conversation, you might hear me use contactless payment technology and NFC payment technology interchangeably. They're basically one and the same. The NFC technology powers the contactless payment technology. So NFC basically means near field communication. And in simple terms, it's pretty clear what it means. Two devices communicating with each other. It's a Wi-Fi technology, so a wireless technology rather. These devices communicate with each other without coming in contact. So you just have those devices in close proximity, usually within a few centimeters, close proximity of each other, and they're able to share information, right? The device here, device 1 and device 2, as long as they have the NFC enabled on both of them, you can share information. Now, what is communication? Basically, sharing information. I have some information and you need to get those information. We communicate and we share those information. This is basically what happens in payment technology, right? You have your card and then you have your terminal. For you to be able to make a transaction or do a payment, your terminal should be able to read information from your card, right? So I'll start with contact payment, right? You need your card to come in contact with the terminal. So for example, your POS, you have to insert your card into the POS. If you go to the ATM, you have to insert your card into the ATM, right, for the communication to happen. But in contactless payment technology, because of the power of NFC, you don't need to have that contact between terminal and payment instrument, right? You just need to bring them to close proximity, and the same information that the payment terminal would read off your contact card when you insert it is the same information that an NFC-enabled terminal would read off your NFC-enabled card. Because what we are basically doing here is taking a contact card, for example, and taking a contact terminal and empowering them with the NFC technology so that they don't need to contact with each other again to have that communication, right? So we more or less like leverage the NFC technology to boost the devices that we use in a normal payment technology, traditional payment technology, and now give them the power to become contactless. I don't need to insert or contact the terminal before I can transfer the information I need from my card. So contactless payment technology is simply a way of making transactions without contacting your terminal or inserting your card in your terminal or a card reader.
Interesting. Wow, thank you so much, Ifeanyi. So I am basically learning and I love it. So from what you said, NFC means near field communication, and basically speaking to the fact that I don't have to when I have an NFC enabled card and an NFC enabled terminal, in that sense, there doesn't have to be contact or information or communication to happen between those two devices, basically.
Correct.
Awesome. So I'm going to move to my next question, because I'm already having many questions in my head right now from the advent of this technology. So from this, what would you say are some of the misconceptions or concerns in particular that people may have about contactless payments, and also how do we address them? So from what you spoke about in terms of defining the key terms, I'm looking at several concerns. Will people not say, oh, okay, I'm looking at Bluetooth or Wi-Fi in that sense? It can automatically connect when it's in range as long as you have the person's password. The same thing with NFC-enabled cards and devices. So just walk me through how that technology works in that aspect, because I know that is definitely one concern that people would have as regards NFC-enabled cards.
All right, great question. You already summarized a couple of the misconceptions and concerns that people would have about contactless payments, stemming from the fact that when contact card payments were introduced, it's called chip and pin, right? The selling point was it is the most secured, right? Because you have a chip and then you have a pin. You're basically doing more or less two-factor authentication with what you have and what you know. When someone takes your card, the person needs to have your PIN, right? When someone has your PIN, the person needs to have your card. And even when you have both PIN and chip, the information in the card is usually encrypted. So now telling people okay, let's move to contactless payments, they become skeptical. You said chip and PIN was the way to go. Contactless would obviously be less secured. So security is one of the main concerns for contactless payments. And really, it's, like I said, it's a misconception, because the same level of security in terms of the encryption and some other technologies like tokenization, which we'll most likely talk about more later, are also in play in contactless technology, right? So it's even a little more, when you know that there's a concern in some particular areas, you will do more to address those concerns. I think that is what is even in play in the contactless payments technology. Meaning, because we know that people would complain about the security of this technology, some extra measures, extra layer of security are now being put in place to curb those security concerns. Another misconception I would throw out there is, I've heard people talk about it's not safe because when you have your contactless card in your pocket, for example, and someone brings a terminal close to you, a contactless terminal, they can do a transaction without you knowing, more or less. In some cases, it's fraudulent. In some cases, it's just an accidental payment. So if you walk past a terminal that is configured to take some certain amount, once you go past there, you spend some time around the terminal. The thinking out there is that you probably have some transactions that you do not plan to do carried out on your card. Now, to address those concerns, it is not like NFC is not like Wi-Fi that you just enter a range and you are susceptible to any kind of connection. For NFC, you need to deliberately bring your card close to the terminal, right? And it needs to maybe a tap or a wave to initiate that transaction. So it is almost impossible for you walking past and someone, except the person is just carrying his terminal close to your pocket and just following you anywhere you go, because you need to initiate. There's an activation leg of the transaction. The card has to be activated by the terminal before anything happens. So there's this deliberate. You have to be deliberate about it before those kind of transactions can go on. So the idea that there will be accidental payment, or someone can just bring a terminal close to you. It's actually a misconception. There needs to be a deliberate action, right? And then there's also some security, like I spoke about security. There's also some security in place. Not all the time you just tap and go, right? There are some levels of transaction, all these transaction limits. That however it happens, you need to authenticate either with a signature or a PIN. Now, the other misconception I would throw out there is data breach or privacy concerns. I mean, your card is basically holding your information, your banking information, right? And the idea is people can read that information and use it to do whatever they need to do. Maybe they can intercept. It's easier to intercept wireless communication networks than the physical network, right? So when your card is close to a device and you're trying to make a payment, there's something that the fraudulent guys would want to use to intercept that transaction and basically just get your information, right? There's that misconception that, my information might be out there. But you see, in contactless technology, there is a level of encryption and tokenization that happens. So your sensitive information that is in your card is not exposed, right? It is. So for example, on your card, you have your PAN. On your contact card, you have a PAN, which translates to the PAN that your bank would use. But in most contactless technologies, most contactless cards, which is also in play in some contact payments, that PAN you are seeing there is tokenized, meaning what you see there is just a random number. Nobody knows what the real number is except your bank that needs to use that number, right? So other information are also encrypted with keys that only your bank or your issuer would know, right? So only your bank or your issuer can decrypt those information and use them. Any interception, anyone that gets your information will basically just be looking at jargons, or will spend like ages trying to decrypt or reverse engineer those information. So those three main concerns: security, the accidental payments, or the privacy. Those concerns are already addressed in the contactless payment technology.
Awesome. So funnily enough, you've answered my next question, but basically it's helping to clarify some misconceptions. So I am looking at it from the point of view of a typical user of this product, and I'm saying, okay, these are most likely the misconceptions or concerns I would have as a person. So you just to further drill down to some of the things you said. So you're saying for contactless cards is not necessarily saying that, once I'm within the perimeter of another NFC-enabled terminal, then I will get debited, or fraudsters can just use that to just debit my account. So you're saying that there are some mechanisms that are in place to be able to ensure that doesn't happen. So I also want to ask, is there a specific sort of distance? It's still me just as a user trying to wrap my head around, okay, how eager would I be to want to adopt this technology?
Yes, so the very nature of NFC, the NFC technology, is basically short-range communication. So you spoke about Bluetooth, you spoke about Wi-Fi, wireless network.
Yes.
So you enter a mall, for example, and you just pick all kinds of signals from different Wi-Fi, right? In the case of NFC, it is real different. It's down to centimeters, right? It's down to centimeters. You need to bring your device close to that terminal and maybe tap or swipe or just wave it across, right, before that activation would even happen.
Okay. So that means that the whole process or bridge in terms of, okay, I need to put in a pin, that part is also totally removed from the process, right?
So not completely. The option is actually there for you to choose. Now, one of the key benefits of this contactless payment technology is speed and convenience, right? And basically technology these days is most times speaking to convenience. How easy can I do the thing without going through stress or spending time, right? So in contactless payments, it doesn't totally say you don't need to do a PIN or you don't need to put a PIN. What we would rather say is, if the transaction is above a certain amount, you need to authenticate with a PIN or a signature or any other way, right? So the one thing that you would notice in contactless payment technologies across the world is different countries setting their limits, transaction limits. There's a limit that the transaction will be a low limit. You don't need to put a PIN. You don't need to put you don't need to sign, or you don't need to do anything. You don't need to authenticate, because it's basically a low risk transaction. But when it gets past that amount, you now have the choice to choose if you want to sign or use a PIN or use any other means of authentication just to validate that transaction.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So I'm going to move to my next questions. You basically answered quite a number of the questions that I have in terms of the benefits of contactless payment technology as compared to traditional payment method. And one of the things you said is basically convenience. And like you said, we live in a age where people just want to tap and go. And I'm not trying to put in my PIN, remember, is this the PIN for this particular card, or issues like that. So in terms of convenience, do you have any other key benefits aside convenience for contactless payment technology as compared to traditional payment technology?
I mean, the fact that you don't need to insert the card into a terminal. It's already very convenient for you. When you go to your ATM, first thing you do is insert the card into a terminal. I mean, people don't want to do that. I just want to tap and go. The next person behind me taps and goes. It contributes to a smoother and more convenient checkout process.
True, so true. And basically also that's the part that it absolves you of putting in your personal details and your personal info into people's terminals as well. Just basically putting that threshold of, okay, I have this particular amount that is low risk. So I also just want to ask, I'm really curious and interested about this. So, and I'm sure that a number of our audience would also be. So I can determine, maybe in collaboration with my service provider or bank provider, and say within this threshold there is a need for a token, a need for a signature or a PIN before this amount leaves my account, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you have some banks will give their customers the ability to change those limits depending on how they want it. Some banks would actually, based on the product they are selling to you, they'll actually set those limits themselves. But I mean, it's just an extra level of security, right? Reducing the risk that you need to go through.
Awesome. So I'm picturing this. I'm going to ask my next question. Well, basically, I'm picturing this in terms of, so I want to maybe even make payment online, and if I have an NFC-enabled phone and my card is also NFC, I can simply just put it in contact and then make payment. I'm picturing how that plays out as well, maybe in the future of payments also.
Yes. So interesting. Yes. You know, I was going to say NFC technology is very versatile. What it means is if you have any device that can be NFC enabled, what that means is you have the liberty to do basically anything with that device in terms of communication, right? Most phones are NFC enabled, and here you would see people tapping their phones. It's powered by that NFC technology. You would see people tapping smartwatches because the watch is NFC enabled. We also talk about wearables. You will see some small wristbands just because we have added an NFC chip to make that wristband NFC enabled. You can use that to carry out your payments. So as long as you can enable a terminal and another device with NFC, then you should be able to carry out those contactless payment transactions, whether with your phone, your smart cards, your smartwatches, your wristbands, your wearables, whatever, your rings. There are rings that have those NFC chips that you can use as well. Yeah.
Awesome. So, let me not jump ahead of myself. Let me move to my next question. So with the rise of mobile payments, I basically feel that we've even answered this question, but with the rise of mobile payment apps like Apple Pay, Google Pay, how do NFC-enabled smart cards fit into the future of digital payments?
Okay, this is you trying to look for or trying to create conflict between two technologies. But yeah, like I said earlier, right? Apple Pay or other mobile payment apps basically leveraging NFC technology, right? And here we are talking about smart cards that is also leveraging the same technology. So it is not about one or the other, but I think most likely complement each other, right? In terms of accessibility, convenience, and maybe just as a backup. So I'll give an example. For mobile payment applications, for instance, the first thing you need to have is a mobile phone that is capable of holding that mobile app and also being NFC enabled. You see, that has restricted your demography, because not everybody would have a mobile phone that is both NFC enabled and would be able to hold your mobile app. You have restricted your demography in that case. On the other hand, NFC enabled smart cards, you don't need to buy a mobile phone. You don't need to buy a device first of all, right? You just go to your bank and ask them for a smart card and give you a contactless smart card. You pay, even if you pay something, but it's a lot cheaper than the buying a mobile phone because you want an app on it, right? So you would find out that in some regions when you go to some places where they don't have that acceptance of high-end mobile devices, it is easier to push smart cards to those kind of regions, right?
Okay.
It doesn't mean that you cannot use one or the other. They basically just complement each other. You can also go to some places where they don't even have network, or they don't even have lights to charge their phones, right? That's if they have those devices. But you see, the smart card now comes in as a more or less a reliable backup, because you don't need to power it. You don't need to be in a region where there's network. Once you have the card and you have the terminal, you are good to go, right? So it's more or less both technologies complementing each other, riding on a base technology. So the mobile apps riding on NFC, smart cards riding on NFC, complementing each other. If there is going to be a replacement of one or the other, then things like having mobile devices get to everywhere with network and all of all that stuff, then you can say this is way to go. But for now, I'm saying these two technologies go side by side, complementing each other.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that. So basically, I want to move to my next question. This has been an insightful conversation. So aside from the financial services industry, what other industries or sectors are adopting contactless payment technologies, and what do you think are the factors that are driving this adoption?
So yeah, nice. I think even more than the financial industry, right? The transportation industry, transit systems basically have gone way ahead in terms of contactless payment adoption. That would stem from the fact that it's a lower risk industry, right? In more advanced countries, you would see payments with contactless cards for their transit system. So they would even just have a card that is basically a transit system. I think some systems in Nigeria have these cards that are contactless. It's easy because the infrastructure is also easy to put in place. For the payment systems, you need to overhaul your infrastructure, all your terminals, all your ATMs. You need to start putting contactless capability in them, or basically just get a new one that has that ability. But for transit system, their terminals are usually just like the normal POS that will be attached in buses or trains, and then they give out those cards where you use more or less like a prepaid system, load those cards and just go and tap, and it deducts whatever amount you have, because those terminals are already pre-configured to deduct a particular amount for particular fares, right? So transportation industry is way ahead, and it's going faster than any other industry. Another industry I would say is also ahead in terms of contactless payments is the hospitality and tourism. Right? There are some hotels you will go to, or there are some places you will go to, and they just give you a card that you would use while you are in that space. Pay for whatever you want with those cards. You just tap and go. If you want to access the gym, you tap and you go. You want to access, maybe pay for food or something, you just tap and you go. Right? Also, loyalty schemes are using these contactless payments to reward customers. Yeah, the adoption on the financial side is not as fast in our region, right? Because first of all, we have to demystify the technology and take away those misconceptions that people have. Then the next hurdle would be overhauling our infrastructure. I mean, institutions, the banks and the issuers, they have invested a lot in the current infrastructure, right? They need to, before we can move to this system, they need to be like an overhaul. I don't know who's willing to build carts, but I mean, that's what it is. So the transportation system, transportation industry, hospitality, in that order, and then maybe the financial industry. Some guys are already picking up contactless payments anyways.
Nice. So Ifeanyi, from the tables of Pryme, from what we do here at Qore, are we working on something in line with contactless payments, or how are we just in quotes driving adoption for that?
So for us in Pryme, we are already positioned, because we are a B2B. We provide this service for the banks to in turn provide a service for their customers, right? So the driver of this particular innovation would most likely be on the bank side. What we have to do on our side is just be ready, because we know about these technologies. We know how fast it is taking over. We need to be prepared. So I can say we at Pryme, we're already prepared to transition. In some cases, we are already issuing out cards on our system that have both interface. So you would see on your card now, if you have any of your ATM cards close to you, you would see the contactless sign, that Wi-Fi sign on it. It means that card can be used on a contact terminal and also on a contactless terminal. So we're already, for the banks that want that, this is how we want it. We want a dual interface card. We're already generating the information that would support the dual interface, and we're already using it to push out those cards. But strictly contactless cards, like let's just not dual interface, strictly contactless cards, we also have the capacity and technology to do that. We are prepared to move on with the banks and the scheme owners when the time comes.
Amazing. This has been a very, very interesting conversation. And yeah, I did mention to our audience at first, I didn't really give Ifeanyi the gang welcome that I wanted to, so I'm going to do it again now. So Ifeanyi happens to be our page champion for the year 2023. And just in case you're wondering what exactly is page, so at Qore, we have 5 core values, which are proficiency, innovation, courage, humility, and entrepreneurial spirit. And for our end of the year last year, Ifeanyi Wakwe was our pitch champion. So you know that we have a guru in the house. He has over the years displayed not just competence and expertise, but also displayed the values and the culture that we uphold here at Qore. Thank you so much, Ifeanyi, for this amazing conversation and basically breaking down contactless payments and the likes to us. It's helped me to see the technology behind things that would usually see in movies and just be like, oh, this is because countries that are way advanced, beyond even Africa, maybe Europe and the likes, they've moved on from this and are even exploring other stuff. But then again, this question always comes up on the podcast in terms of the rate of adoption for us here in Nigeria and also across Africa. And like you rightly raised one of the key concerns, there's hardly any bank at this point in time that will say, okay, because I want to support the future of digital payments, let's overhaul. It would take a gradual process, and we are really optimistic of that happening, at least in the nearest future. And we're positioned to also enable financial institutions to comply with the future of digital payments. Thank you, Ifeanyi. I'm going to bring you back. There's no escaping this. I'm going to bring you back on this podcast. Now I'm going to just basically speak to other interesting stuff and interesting aspects of payments technology. And it might be us just talking about your story, how you evolved to doing the awesome things that you're doing now. Yes. So exactly. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode of the podcast. I'm sure it was an enjoyable conversation for you as it was for me. Feel free to drop insights, questions, feedback in the comments, and we will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Till we'll come your way next time. Keep being courageous. Bye.
Bye, guys.